y equals to absolute value of x was one of the graphs that you have to memorize. It's this. You can get this graph by carefully plugging in values and plotting, and you get this V-shaped thing. Let's just make sure that you know what absolute value is. What's the absolute value of negative 3?
3.
3. Right? What's the absolute value of 3? 3. Okay. So if it's positive, do you do anything? You don't do anything. If you plug in something negative, what does the absolute value do? Makes it positive. Okay. So if this is positive, that's always the value should be positive, right? Okay. Now, since we've seen some examples of piecewise graphs, you kind of see that this is like a piecewise function because before 0, it's the graph that goes down like that. After 0, it's another line that goes up. Okay? Is that good? So I want to see how you can write this as a piecewise function. So let's see. Let's look at the left-hand side. At negative 1, what's the y value? 1, because the absolute value of negative 1 is 1, right? At 0 is 0. So let's think about this graph. What's the y-intercept of this graph?
0.
0. So I know that y equals to mx plus b in the form y equals mx plus b. B is the y-intercept and b is 0. So we almost found this equation. All we need to know is the m. What's m? It's a slope. Slope is what? Negative 1, right? Because you go down by 1. So rise is negative 1, and then run is 1. So rise over run is the slope, right? It's negative 1 over 1, so it's negative 1. So I know that this is negative 1, so I know that the equation for this is y equals to negative x. Okay? All right, now let's look at the right side, this one, and we just do the exact same thing. At 1, where does it pass through? 1 comma what? 1 comma 1, because absolute value of 1 is just 1. So I'm talking about the right side of the absolute value function. So in order to know the values, all we have to do is just plug in values here, right? So at 1 comma 1, there's a point. And 0 comma 0 is another point. Again, the y-intercept is 0, so all you need to know is the value of 1. What's the slope? Rise is 1. Run is 1. So it's 1 over 1, which is 1. So m is 1. Therefore, this equation is y equals to x. Okay. So we almost have it. We almost have it. Here's the absolute value of function. Let me just write it like this. Absolute value of function written as a piecewise function. When x is 0 or negative, what's the equation for the function? Y equals negative x. So you put negative x, okay? When x is positive, what's the equation for the function?
X.
Y equals to x. So that's the definition of absolute value function as a piecewise function. Yes?
Why isn't the regular x, let's say, why isn't the piecewise x is greater than or equal to 0? Because it shares the same.
Oh, right. So you're correct. We could put this, and it wouldn't cause any contradiction because you could put 0 here or there. It both gives you 0, right? So there's no contradiction in the definition. But usually, if you have one of them including that value, you want to exclude that value in the other definition. So I wrote it like this, right? But if you wanted, you could delete the equal sign here and put equal sign here. Okay, so that'll be another way to write down the definition. Okay, yeah. So this is fine too. All right, so let's go with this. Okay, that's also fine. So that's the definition of the absolute value function. Here's a question though. How come the definition has a negative sign? I thought absolute value functions only gave you positive values. How is it possible that you get a minus in the definition?
Because it has negative values.
Huh?
Because it has negative values.
No, absolute value function always gives you positive values. It's always above the x-axis. Yeah.
Because you input negative values.
Right. Your input is negative. When you plug in negative, what's negative of negative? It's positive. So don't be fooled by this definition. This negative x, is this a negative value or a positive value? It's a positive value because you're plugging in negative. Got it? Right. So it's a little head spinning, but that's the fun side of math. It sometimes challenges your brain. Yeah. So that's the definition of the absolute value as a piecewise function.